Welcome to the Unfinished Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Elsner. If you've been following along since the Strength Pages podcast days, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome to the show. We're officially relaunching with a new name and a renewed focus on conversations that dig into the messy, evolving, and beautifully unfinished nature of how we learn, grow, and get better at the things that matter to us. You know, there's something beautiful about embracing the fact that we're all works in progress, that our best insights often come not from having all the answers, but from wrestling with the right questions. And that is exactly what this show is about, exploring the spaces between where we are and where we're going. Today, I'm thrilled to kick off this relaunch with Greg Souders, a jiu-jitsu coach and educator who spent years rethinking how we approach training, learning, and skill development. Greg has recently suffered a serious bicep tendon injury that honestly could have sidelined him completely, but instead it's forced him to evolve his teaching methods in fascinating ways. We're diving deep into the world of games, not just the games that you play, but the kind you design to unlock human potential. We'll explore how jiu-jitsu training has shifted from rigid traditional methods to something called ecological dynamics, why co-designing learning experiences with students changes everything, and how the messiness of the learning process might actually be its greatest strength. This conversation touches on ego, authenticity, the responsibility coaches have to communicate clearly, and why showing your work, even when it's imperfect, is essential for growth. Greg brings insights that stretch far beyond the mats into how we can all become better at facilitating learning and development in whatever arena we find ourselves in. So whether you're a coach, educator, athlete, or just someone curious about how we get better at getting better, this one's for you. Let's jump in with Greg Souders and explore the beautiful, unnatured art of designing games that transform how we learn. So, Greg, I want to say thank you for taking your time, sit down, and talk with me, and be here today. I know things have been a little chaotic, as you'll probably see. You have a little bit of a cast on. Walk me through what happened.
Oh man, the morning of Alex and Dee's wedding, I was training with one of my strength and conditioning coach. He's a big guy, and I posted weirdly on the mat, and he landed like behind my elbow while I was posting, and I ruptured my distal bicep tendon off of the bone.
Oh,
So
geez.
I
Have
had to
you
get it fixed.
have you done that before?
Oh hell no, I've never actually. I mean, I dislocated my elbow one time as a white belt, but nothing tore. I mean, and if there were tears, they were minor. But this is like the first real arm injury I've ever had. So, but the bicep was rolling up, so they were like, "We need to fix this now, otherwise
Yeah.
it's going to heal like that." So,
Yeah, it's like those videos you see on social media of guys going too heavy on bicep curl and you see it just kind of roll up. Uh, no, I think when I was strength and conditioning coach full time, I know I saw, I think, an Achilles rupture, and that was kind of the most gruesome one that I've seen, where it just rolls right up, and then which never really freaked me out per se. I don't know what it is, like any type of like injury that way never really freaked me out. But well, I hope you have a speedy recovery with that.
oh, thanks, man. Yeah,
Yeah,
just got cut open on Monday. So,
yeah.
what's today? Thursday?
Thursday, yep.
Oh.
Yeah. And with that, I kind of leads me into, with you having this type of injury and you being an instructor, how are you going to be going about, using your capabilities now to instruct your students now with you having a very limited constraint?
Well, no different than before. I mean, my voice hasn't changed just because my bicep tendon ruptured. So, um, I mean, I have students who'll be demonstrating the games for me and showing the situations for me. Right now, I'm kind of like in and out of the gym. I can't stay here for too long because my hand and bicep start to swell quite a bit and I get like tingling, numb sensation. So once that starts to happen, I just head home, ice my shit, rested, then I come back. So this will be on for 2 weeks, and then I go get the stitches out, and I get put in a metal brace, which I'll be wearing for a few months until my arm can be locked straight again. So, but no, it won't affect me at all. I mean, other than, of course, this is the initial part while the wound is healing. But again, once the wound is healing, I'm good to go. Excuse me, once the wound has healed, I'll be good to go. But I'll just be narrating my classes. I'll have people demonstrating the tasks and conditions that we'll have set, and then business will be as usual.
Nice, nice. Well, before we get more into like the nitty-gritty of things and like I get to learn more about how you approach ecological dynamics and constraints approach all that. Um, One of the things I wanted to really talk to you and sit down with you is your ability to gamify skill. And I'm a big nerd when it comes towards games. I play video games all the time, card games, all that stuff. And like any main character in any story, there's an origin story. So can you just give me a little bit of your background and like your origin story and leading up to, present day?
Oh, you mean like origin what? My jiu-jitsu origin or my ecological dynamics origin?
Everything. Tell me it
Everything.
all, man.
I'll be quick.
Everything.
It's a long and boring fucking story, but basically, I started jiu-jitsu. I actually remember the first day, February 10th, 2004, was my first time ever stepping on a jiu-jitsu mat. I was actually working during that time. I worked at a video store in the evening, and then I installed home theaters or basically audio-visual equipment in houses during the day. That's what I did. I was so obsessed with jiu-jitsu, I would like rush off of work and I'd be there like so long. The instructor asked me if I wanted a job. So I quit my other two jobs and started working at the gym full time about 6 months after starting jiu-jitsu. I was lucky because during that time it was the boom of the Ultimate Fighter. So I mean, I
Hmm.
got paid quite a bit just to be there, to run intros, to run emails, to do all the stocking in the back. So that was pretty much how I got started. And then I was hooked right away. I mean, the first week I trained 6 days that week, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, I just never stopped. I've been on the mat pretty much every day since, minus injuries here or there. Um, I moved to Lloyd Irvin's camp full time in 2007, and I stayed there until 2013. 2013, I went off on my own, spent about a year working for other academies in the area. And then in February 10th, oddly enough, 10 years after my initial introduction to jiu-jitsu was the very first day I opened my own school. I subleased some space out of a yoga studio for about a few months until I was up to about 21 students. And then I got the place where I am now.
Nice, nice. So tell me a little bit about, with your starting out with jujitsu as, a youngin and a beginner or novice. Tell me how that those practices, those training sessions and the drills that you did, how did they evolve from when you first started to now? Like
So
where was that aha moment to make this switch from traditional to ecological?
we're in the dark ages now. Think about where we were 20 years ago. Holy shit.
Hmm.
So the first
Yeah.
school I was at was a Lloyd Irvin affiliate. I was there for 3 years. And the first 45 minutes of class was basically a workout class. Like we climbed ropes and jumped over each other and carried each other and dragged each other down the mat. We did sprints. 45 minutes was as a workout. We didn't even do any jiu-jitsu. And then after that workout, our instructor would show like 6 moves in like 30 minutes. It would be like, here's a move, go try it. Okay, time. Here's a move, okay, try it. Oh, time. Like, it was just so crazy. It was like whatever, but you don't know because you don't know what's right or
Mhm.
wrong. And then after we did our like, I guess drilling session, if that's what you call it, I guess a move showing and trying session. I don't know what it was. We would just spar, and sometimes you would even forget to put time on the clock, so we would just roll. You'd get a partner and you go to work. Sometimes you switch partners, sometimes you wouldn't. And pretty much every class I ever had was like that. Sometimes the original instructor that I had would have other instructors around that would talk about one thing for like 20 minutes. I remember one time listening to a diatribe about a knee cut. I'll never forget it for literally 20 minutes. I actually went into the bathroom to act like I had to go to the bathroom. I took my gi off and I like screamed into it because I was so frustrated. Because after our long ass warm up, we sat there for 20 minutes listening to this guy babble on about nothing. It was brutal. And so a lot of the classes were like that. Luckily, going over to Lloyd's was a much more professional and focused environment. Though we did a lot of static drilling, a lot of high repetition static drilling, we also did a lot of game-based stuff. What I mean by game-based stuff is we would play like first to score. We would do a lot of situational sparring. We would do 90-second rounds, 2-minute rounds, 3-minute rounds, shit like that. So there was a lot of very, very high focused live training, but we also did a lot of high focus static drilling.
Okay. And when you made that switch from a more disorganized environment to this more professional setting where you have these games and whatnot, uh, what really stuck with you in that change? Because that's a pretty big change from 45-minute workout to, hey, here's this, go do it. Here's this, go do this, and 20 minutes of just talking.
Well,
What's
because at the end of the day, it was all jujitsu with Lloyd. So like,
yeah.
whether we were drilling or not, we were doing jujitsu. I mean, the warm up, if we did a warm up, it would either be the jiu-jitsu related warm up, where we were like doing sweep for sweep, or pass mount, recover, sweep, pass mount, something like that. It was drilling, but it was like still jujitsu, right? So there wasn't this
Hmm.
like workout portion. And if we did, we might have did a few shrimps down the mat or some rolls or something, but it was 10 minutes at most. Or we might even warm up with hand fighting. We would do like we would have like these specific grip sequences that were given to us by Roddy Ferguson that we were supposed to drill and warm up with. So we would do those. And it was much more jujitsu oriented. The intensity was very prescriptive. Like, this is what we're going to do. This is the time we're operating. This is how hard we're going to do it. The mentality was like competitive, competitive, beat each other, win. It just felt like, we were gaining access to the thing that we were really trying to train.
So it felt like the actual thing that you
Yeah.
were ultimately working on. You see, that's something that a lot of coaches, professionals, practitioners, whatever you want to call it, I feel like they're still stuck in that dark age where it's like it's very prescriptive, where it's like, hey, here's this drill of perfect angles, perfect positioning. Let's spew a bunch of shit about it and talk about it, and this is how it should be. And I feel like the mixed martial arts world, since the past 6, 7 months, since I kind of got more into, social media, connecting with people, and really deep diving into a lot of like taking the time to deep dive into these concepts, is really that there's this shift in the world with that. And I'll give you credit to that, since when I started, I kind of followed you right away because I think you're a little bit of a pioneer, or like that dark horse in this world of just telling people, hey, like this is how it is, this is how it is, this is what actually works. So tell me, like, what was this moment in time that made you made that switch for you from traditional to this?
So I already kind of had the suspicion that the stuff we were doing wasn't efficient, because the results we were getting were wildly different. And for me specifically, like, some of the stuff that I was doing and the way we were training wasn't transferring into the performance setting. So I just kind of had a feeling that something wasn't right. I just didn't know what it was. And so then when doing research, that's when I really started to, and I say research, and I cannot, the internet says I can't use that word because I'm not a researcher. So
Yeah.
let me try to clarify that. When I use research, I mean, I guess the best way I can describe it, if I wanted to still use that term, is that we were doing, like, I guess a collection of data. So I would go look at a bunch of different studies on a given topic, and I would try to read what they had to say about it. And based on my own understanding, I would try to collect what I thought would be like the meat of what was being found, and then I would try to apply that. So I started with that right when I opened my own school, because I wanted to coach well, and the only thing I knew about coaching was what was taught to me before. So
Hmm.
I needed to investigate what this coaching process was all about. Like, how do we learn? How do we teach? What is a move? How do moves happen? How do we get better? And so I started looking at all those as individual topics. And then I came across a bunch of scientists who were trying to figure out the same thing. Uh, and here we are with dynamical systems theory, ecological dynamics, the constraints-led approach.
So I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but you took quite a few years to really deep dive and research and get, you know, the meat and potatoes of the literature and the thoughts behind it before like really implementing it whole gung ho. Is that correct?
No. I was implementing it from day one. I just
Okay.
wasn't really sure how to do it. So
Oh, okay.
I ran into the first problem like everyone run into, but I didn't know what it was then. But now when I look back, I can define it as the scaling problem. So when we
Hmm.
first run into this idea that things should be live or there should be resistance always, or as my friend Josh Peacock likes to say, unscripted and uncooperative, I didn't know how to scale that. So how do we get beginners to resist over things to build them skill? What should they be resisting over? What should be should they be fighting over? So I didn't really know how to do that at first because all I was ever shown was moves. We drilled them and then we did situational sparring. So I wasn't sure like how one thing became another thing. Um, so what I first started to do was just kind of reduce how much verbal information I was giving. That was the first thing that I actually tried to do. We would warm up with a pattern of movement, and then we would try to focus on doing that pattern of movement in a live way against resistance. But I
Hmm.
started implementing right away. It's just how it looked for, let's say, a beginner versus someone with some experience versus an advanced player was very different. Most of my pure live work with no explanation, I just saved for my advanced guys because I basically I came to them. I said, "Hey, look, we're going to try this new stuff, and I'm going to mess up a lot. And I'm going to say dumb things, and it's going to sound like shit. But since you guys are already with me, just kind of let me go through this learning process, embrace what's happening, and we'll talk to one another as we move along." And that I was able to use them as a way to sort of springboard my new understanding of applying the stuff I didn't really understand well. And then I back applied it to the basic class years later. So around 2016, 2017 was where I really pulled the trigger on building a foundations program that was centered around nothing but live work.
Okay. Okay. So you've been able to find that scaling, that progressive complexity, I guess, when through trial and error with your advanced students. How did you allow for any was it representative design between them? Like you all worked together on this and like you kind of taught it, but you allowed them to have input on it?
Well, that's not really that's not. I maybe by using that word incorrectly. Representative design.
I probably
Yeah. So
um
representative design is a way to
co-design, I guess. Co-design, I guess.
co-design. Yeah, co-design is
Yeah.
what you're referring
Yep.
to. So I actually think that everything is co-designed because let's imagine even if we agree to it or not. Let's say I put out a game or a task focus in a room.
Hmm.
My athletes are going to enact that, and I'm going to watch how they problem solve based on what they think I'm asking them to do. So inadvertently, I'm paying attention to them to reinform what I do next, or to inform what I do next. And then it's this cycle that's going on and on. And then as we talk, as we communicate, as we grow, we're both learning from each other. Again, the practice that I design and the feedback I'm getting from them in real time using it. And so what I like to do is I like to see the results from my students and then change the game. So I already think it is co-design, but specifically asking and having someone tell me, I don't do this as much depending on who I'm working with. So if I'm working with a high level athlete like DeAndre, I don't want him thinking about the way practice is designed when he's training for something. But I might,
Hmm.
if I need his help with something, I might give him a very particular focus to see what effect it has on him. And then I might use that data collected to think about how I might want to do it next time. But again, I think it's co-authored regardless of whether that's the intention or not.
I like that. I like how you put that where it's just kind of without having that intention, it's already authentically there. And that's something that I really like early on. I think I came across this whole like shift about what 5, 6 years ago or something like that. And I still consider myself a novice in the understanding. So that's why I'm having these talks with people like you, conversations, all that stuff. But like that was something that was really eye-opening for me, and that was a big let go was to like allowing for my athletes or the people that I'm with to like have their own voice, their autonomy, and we co-design certain drills, certain games, and all that stuff, which is honestly, I think that's what's missing in a lot of professional sports. I think is you have this dogmatic approach where the coach is the coach and the athlete is the athlete, and the coach is telling the athlete what to do and they have to follow. Um, I think that's something that's missing is that link between, that autonomy, that organic growth and co-design.
Are you talking about professional like NBA and MLB stuff like that? Or
NBA, NFL, stuff
yeah,
like
so
that.
I talked to some of those guys in the background, and they actually seem to have a different problem. It actually
Oh,
seems, yeah, it seems like the issue they have is they're too much autonomy. So the best players pretty much run the fucking show.
oh,
Like
okay.
they have a head coach that says what needs to be done, so everyone's kind of filtered through that. They have a skills coach who tries to intervene, but he's just a fucking skills coach. What does he know? So no one really listens to him. And then if the top dog doesn't want to do the fucking thing, they're not going to do the fucking thing. Sometimes they show up for practice, sometimes they don't, sometimes they do their own thing. So I think that it does there. As my experience and what I being in the background, talking to some of these skill acquisition coaches in the NFL, in the MLB, they're actually having a harder time bringing everybody together. I think they're having a hard time finding some cohesion for how practices should be run and scheduled for the players. It seems like everyone is doing their own individual thing. And again, that's for my short interactions with the people at that level.
Yeah, no, that's actually very insightful. And honestly, I guess looking back at it, I don't have that much experience in the professional setting, but like that was just my like outside perspective. Who
Yeah,
knows
I feel
if
like
I'm right or wrong.
I feel like it's more of like a cultural thing that we see. We see like a coach and their students, and the students
Hmm.
do what the coach says. So I think that's just a general or at least an American view about how
Yeah.
coaching should happen. So this coach centric room, I think, is a huge problem for designing effective and efficient practice. I think getting the students more involved, not so much in direct game design, maybe, but at least paying attention to them and letting their needs dictate how we design practice. Even if they don't, again, if they don't directly intervene, I think that's a nice starting point.
Hmm. No, I agree with you. Yeah, there is that cultural setting of just like, hey, coach, listen to coach, all that stuff. And I mean, that's how I was raised and all that stuff. And that's something that I'm like, trying to break myself sometimes. I mean, sometimes go back to be like, oh yeah, if there's problems that arise, if a athlete isn't really listening to me, like sometimes I'm just like, hey, just listen. Or even my daughter, who's like coming up on 14 months, like it's like I gotta be able to co-design with her. I'm trying. She's kind of like my little experiment too with a lot of this, trying to design games around her, keep her engaged, all that stuff. So I'm learning it hands-on every single day with her. But um, when you're designing games, can you just kind of walk me through your process on how to design games to, get the, I guess, not desired outcome, but like teaching the student or the athlete like what your intention is, I guess.
Okay, so I guess we have to start back a little bit because the first thing I had to do is I had to like understand grappling a little bit better.
Hmm.
So what I did was if I was interested in like a movement, a move, a position, an exchange, something that we would traditionally drill, I would look at a bunch of examples of that with live footage. So I would try to find a bunch of competition footage on where these things were happening. So let's say like
Hmm.
we can use like a standing thing. Let's say a single leg takedown. So we shoot into the leg, pick it up, and do something with it. I'd watch a bunch of examples how singles happened. And then what I would look for are precursors to the ability to grab the single. So, well, I'd use the word precursor then, just things that would happen before the person would take a shot on the leg or go get the leg or pick up the leg. And then I would look at how they held the leg, what happened when they kept the hold of it, and how they would use that to advance their position. And so I would look at a bunch of different examples of that. And then I would look at things that were always present or these conditions, things that they did. And then what I would do is I would turn those things into task focuses. Let's say we know that the hands are always in the way. If the hands are always in the way, it's going to be hard to go get the legs. So we have to design practices to manipulate the hands. So maybe a first practice game I would design would be get to your partner's hands, try to keep a hold of them while you move them out of the way while we look to connect to one of the legs. We could make it real broad like that. So we try to build relationship between gripping hands or finding opportunities to grip hands. And then while gripping those hands, finding opportunities to move them out of the way so we could grab the leg that we wanted. Something very, very simple. And then we put that into play. And then I would do this for a bunch of different exchanges. And so then I would learn things about how grappling happens historically. I would create task focuses based on the conditions that we see present in most cases, and then implement them as a task focus to my students. And then based on the results my students were getting, I would just wash, rinse, repeat that process. So if I noticed they weren't staying on the hands for long enough and they weren't creating that opportunity, the goal, we might take a step back. We wouldn't try to connect to the single. We would try to get a hold of your partner's wrist and keep it for as long as possible. Then we would build back in while keeping a hand for as long as possible, move them out of the way and go get connected. So it's basically this constant updating of understanding what's happening in the grappling environment, taking notes of the relationships that are present, and then using those conditions as task focuses and then implementing it as a feedback mechanism for my students based on their implementation. Um,
Okay.
And I still
Okay.
continue to do that now, but now I have a greater understanding of the relationships that are present in many, many, many exchanges. So now I can pretty much do it on the fly.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. No, that's insightful on seeing your process on how to design games through that and trying to get different intentions from that. That's something that is still foreign to me a little bit, but we're all learning, we're all growing and all that stuff. Um, One thing, how do you go about, I guess this is my like sports science side, like from my realm because I was always taught in the strength and conditioning world, sports performance world, like testing is like you have to make sure 40-yard dash, how many times you can bench press 225, all that stuff from like the NFL Combine. Um, how do you like evaluate progress, I guess?
Well, so what we know about the combine is the success of an athlete has nothing to do with their combine numbers.
Hmm.
Oftentimes,
Yeah.
you see these wildly successful athletes that had shit numbers or were even noticed or were
Hmm.
like late draft picks or something. So I think
Like
there's
uh like Larry Fitzgerald actually comes to mind quite a bit, I think. He didn't have great NFL Combine numbers, if I'm correct.
well, again, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I just know this to be
Yeah.
historically true. I
Yeah.
wouldn't
Yeah.
get into
Yeah.
the details. Yeah, I don't pay
Yeah.
attention to sports at that level of analysis. But either way, we often see this, right? So what this tells us is there's the relationships that are happening in a sporting context are so complex that we can't take these individual parsable moments of performance and use them to define uh, sport-like outcomes. So
Hmm.
I think that's the first place we start. So rather than try to use these like decontextualized points of analysis, we have to see how whatever we're using to manipulate the constraints affect the athlete either that day or over a course of time, and how those practices affect future performance outcomes. So the simplest way that I do it would be through competitors. So we have a person competing, right? I'm going to go out and compete, coach. Okay, great. First competition, let's go out and see what you did and see how it works. We don't even put a training process for you. Just go see what results we get. Okay, so then he gets taken down a bunch. Says, "Hey man, I really want to stay on my feet, coach, and take my partner down. I don't want to get taken down." So then now we design a bunch of training focuses over the next 6 to 8 weeks for the next competition that revolve around developing skills on the feet. And then so we use specific task focus to develop specific skills. And then now we set them back out to that future date, and we try to see if they're able to implement what happened in training in that future performance setting. If there's a connection between what happened in training and what we see in performance, we see progress. We see that the stuff we did in training directly reflected the stuff we see in performance settings, and then we know we're headed in the right direction. If we don't see that happen, we know something went wrong. But it's hard to know what might went wrong. Was it the individual? Was it the day? Was it the way they were
Hmm.
feeling? Was it their emotions? Was it what was it? But then that's the art of coaching, right? So then it's my constant communication, interacting with my athletes, trying to match the demands of training with the demands of performance.
No, I love that. That's ultimately what every athlete, every coach is trying to do is try to uh, try to bridge that gap between, practice and training to performance. And that was something that really, like, for me, when learning all this and still learning about this, like, obviously, um, is trying to bridge that gap. And I think a lot of coaches, from my perspective, I could be completely wrong, who knows, is trying to break away from the norm of testing and having everything like be so robotic and like try to bridge that gap that way instead of it being that organic between try this in training, see if it correlates to performance, and then like you say, if it didn't translate, go back kind of to the drawing board if I'm correct.
Well, yeah, I mean, so performance is the
Yep.
test. Competition
Yep.
day is the test. So did what we did, excuse me, did what we do. Oh my God, how do I say that? Did the things we do 6 to 8 weeks leading up to the performance affect the performance, and how did it? Did they have a good
Hmm.
one? Did a bad one? Did we see the things that we were trying to get to emerge in training emerge in performance? Did we see the relationship? Again, if we don't see the relationship, we see something else, then we know there's something else guiding that system. And so we might need to manipulate it differently next time.
So how's your process for like let's say you have your 20 students, whatever, how many students you have, and how do you design spaces, design systems that allow for individual learning processes? based off of that, based off of performance.
So we always use multiple affordances when designing a game. So let's imagine we are building a skill like guard passing, and we want the segmentation process to be expressed many different ways. So clear feet, get the knees inside or outside. We'll give multiple paths towards the win condition. So for example, we could clear the feet, step in between the knees, clear the feet, step outside the knees. And once we get in between or outside the knees, we win if we get our hands connected anywhere from hips to shoulders, as long as we're under at least one elbow, right? Let's say we use a stereotypical starting game like that. There's enough ways that you can go about that process that each individual can explore that space and find what fits their inclinations. All right. So if someone, coach, I really like stepping between the knees, man, I can really find paths to chest this way. Great. Keep doing it. If someone, oh man, I really like going around the legs and making the knees face the direction before I get the hips. Great. Keep doing it that way. So we set the tasks around invariance, but we leave multiple affordances available so that students can find the win condition many different ways. And then we always encourage, if you find success, try to find it again. So try to repeat it. See if there's something you notice and something that got you to where you're going. See how many different times you can do that. Not just today, tomorrow, the next day, and on how many different bodies. And then we use that as a way to guide the student around specifically. Again, that we go from that general class structure towards a cultural level of specificity, where we let people go in the directions they're most inclined to. And then, of course, I communicate with the individual athletes individually to help change the way things are happening for each of them.
Okay. I like that. Do you like you kind of you mentioned there are different bodies. Do you change up within each session or each day of like who is with who during the day
Yeah,
or each
so
session?
our general culture here is single practice, single partner. So, for example, on a Monday at 7 a.m., D has one partner. Later that night, when we do a second practice, he has to choose somebody different. Typically, if we can help it, we don't choose the same person twice in a week. Each training session, you must get a different training partner. That way we can get novel touches. We don't get used to
Hmm.
touching the same person over and over and over again. We also
Yeah.
use this as a way to manipulate intensities. So let's say, for example, D chooses his brother on Monday because Monday's a high day and intensity is high. I might not want him to have that same level of intensity the next day. So he'll pick somebody that's lower on his intensity scale based on his historical interaction. So somebody who's lighter and who's not as skilled. He might pick him on the next training session to sort of reduce the effect that intensity is going to have on his ability to recover. So again, not only is it a cultural thing, so we get novel touches, but we also use it as a way to manipulate rest and recovery or intensity
I
rest.
love that. No, I love that. I love that. You kind of my strength coach mind kind of sparked when you said high intensity, low intensity, where it's like a little bit of a high-low approach in that, or Charlie Francis, I guess, approach. And I love that. No, that's awesome. And I actually that kind of answered a little bit about how you kind of scale difficulty and scale different novel touches, or I guess not scale, but like you get those touches with different bodies because that's one different information, all that different affordances with different bodies and all that different skill levels, and that's awesome. That's a really good insight, and I love that.
Well, think about this. I mean, we do the constraints-led approach. Everything constrains everything else. So what
Hmm.
does the coach have to him in the environment that he can manipulate to change the constraints? I mean, typically, the things that I've broken it down to are simple in the jiu-jitsu context. We have the task itself, so what we're trying to do. We have the time we're using to do that task. And then we have the partner in front of us. And so, or partner selection. So these three levers are probably the most available to any coach in the grappling setting. And so we're always trying to use those different levers to create different effects. So partner selection just doesn't have new body effect. There's tons of different effects from a single body. They could be lighter than
Hmm.
you. They could be heavier than you. They could be psychologically one way or another. They could be skill-wise one way or another. They're also going through changes throughout the week. So by Thursday, they're also fatigued, which changes their ability to express their skill. So just in partner selection, and understanding how to manipulate it appropriately, we have so many different ways we can constrain training just from that manipulate that one component part.
Yeah, for sure. That's huge. There's a lot of information just from one constraint or multiple constraints in that realm. So When you're having someone go through a game or people going through a particular game and they're just not getting it, how do you go about that?
So first I have to ask myself, did I fuck up? So I always start with myself first. Was I clear? Does the athlete know what I'm asking them to do? Because if I wasn't clear and they don't know what they're asking me to do, then that's on me. And in a general setting, when you have 30, 40 people in a room, a lot of people are too self-conscious to say, hey, I don't understand. So
Yeah.
you've got to have your eyes on it. Typically, I look for intentionality. If I set a task and I look out and I can see what they're intending to do based on what I asked, I know I probably did a decent job at conveying the intention. If it looks like complete shit, I might go over there and just say, "Hey, what was the intention?" So then the next step, next layer would be to ask the confused student, "What are we doing?" If they give me something other than what I said, I probably messed up. Now, if I go over there and they told me what I said and they're not doing it, that's on them then. So now I know that them just being, a lazy student. And so I try to reaffirm the task, and then I just walk away and leave it alone.
Okay. No, I like that. It kind of helps you get face to face with people, but also I love that humble approach where it's just like they're not getting it. That's on me, and it's a learning process.
Well, you think about it like this. Like, think about an athlete, right? You go out and you try a thing that the coach asked you to do and you failed. You don't immediately scoff and look at the coach, but you told me the wrong shit, coach. The
Hmm.
athlete has to be responsible for themselves first to meet their
Hmm.
coach. So a coach is the same way. A coach has to be responsible for himself first before he reaches down at the athlete. So each of us have a duty and have a job to do, and we have to make sure that we are optimizing our ability, and if we can even say that, to do our duty before we put blame on somewhere else. We put focus somewhere else. You know, notice your own shit first, and then you can start looking at other people's shit.
No, I'm right there with you. I think that's from the coaches that I've come in touch with, they don't understand that. They think, oh, I came up with this. Why aren't you doing it? Like, why aren't you performing well? It's all on you. It's not on me. I'm the coach. I'm the head coach. I'm getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, like I'm the one who's right, you're wrong, kind of thing. And that's never really that's rubbed me the wrong way, and that's just not how it should be.
Well, I think the reason this is so pervasive is because like the field itself attracts, or the leader field attracts egotistical, people like that. And anyway, I never really wanted to be a coach, so I always resisted authority. I've always been sort of an iconoclast, so I don't really care. Like I don't really see myself as an authoritative figure. I see myself as a guide or a designer. I always tell my students the only thing difference between you and me is that I care more about what I'm doing than you do. So that's it. Like, I'm just a jiu-jitsu guy who knows a lot about jiu-jitsu, who's trying his best to convey it to you, but that's all I really am at the end of the day. I don't really like the position of leadership. For me, I see it as a call to action. So I just try to fulfill that role as best I can. So again, I don't see it as my identity so much as the authority that my position has afforded me, if that is even a
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, no, it is. It's an affordance, something that like shines bright to you and it really attracts you and it's that opportunity to action. And I love that how you put it where it's like you see yourself more as a designer or as a guide and instead of this authoritative figure. And honestly, like I'll be like that's kind of what I wanted. Like my whole intention is I love being around athletes and I always wanted to coach it and I care a lot about like training, the science, all about that and whatnot. But then some like ego side of me wanted to be like I'm a coach. But then that really changes. It's just like being shit out left and right from organization to organization where people above me have that ego and it's like, you're not doing it my way, bye. You're not doing it my way, bye. That's a dumb idea. Why are you doing it this way? All right, we're just gonna throw you out. And that's where I'm just like, why are egos such a big deal? And it's honestly destroying a lot of things here within the development of like even younger athletes too, because I majority of my career has been with youth athletes and seeing them go through, was it these private teams, private schools, and just like you're working with this authoritative, egotistical person year round, and I think it's destroying a lot of athletes.
Oh no, for sure, man. I mean, that's the whole one of the reasons I opened my own school is like I wanted my own sandbox to play in, and I don't want people to tell me how to play in my fucking sandbox. Like,
Yeah.
because it's silly. And it's like I actually preferred working at other gyms and working for other coaches. Like I don't really like the business side of things. So I
Hmm.
just wanted to do my job as a coach, but that was becoming impossible because no matter how good your ideas were, no matter how effective you were as a coach, there was always some other thing that was more important than your effectiveness as a coach. It would be like, how are your students feeling emotionally? Well, I mean, unless those emotions aren't linked to either their health or their performance, I don't give a fuck. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So again, I want healthy students. So, of course, their emotions matter when it comes to their health, but it also matters, are they performing well? And if that's my job, then I'm going to have to maximize that. And at your school, if you want me to care more about the political conversation versus how they perform, then this is probably not the place for me. And so, anyway, I just had to find a place where I was free of all of that, because I want to wake up in the morning and go do a job. I don't want to, pander to some, ideologue or some shit.
No, I hear you. And I feel like you and I, like, you were kind of an affordance to me, I guess, when I started, diving into this because I felt like I vibed well with your message and your, um, I guess, not misfit type of persona or like this dark horse persona, like challenging norms. But that's kind of like it's where I'm at right now too, is I want to challenge norms. I want to be able to play in my own sandbox and stuff like that. Um, and I love it.
Well, it's so funny, man. It's strange that that's like the strangest thing about me as a figure or all these things. People put that on me. Like I literally am just being real. These motherfuckers were
Yeah.
like, oh, you're edgelord supreme. You're trying to be controversial. But no, I'm not. I'm just you
No.
suck at your job, and I can see it because I have eyes, and I'm letting you know that you suck at your job, and it just made everybody angry. You know what I mean? It's like, all right. It's like we can see it, buddy. Like, we watch
Yeah.
your Instagram, we see your instructional reels. Like, it's not a mystery that you guys don't know what you're talking about. Because if you compare any of the things you're saying to what's actually happening, there's no connection. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so what I'm trying
No.
to do is also by saying it, it puts me up there. It's like, so if I'm going to say this out loud, then I better do a better job because, you know, by calling you out, I'm inadvertently exposing myself, and now people are going to start calling me out. So I don't know, if you have an opinion and you think you're right, you might as well share it and be who you are. And if
Yeah.
you do have a way that you think is better, then show your work, man, and get to it.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. And I totally agree with that. And that's honestly that's something that like was kind of went through with me these past few months. Honestly, is kind of like a shift in just finding my voice, being able to just be comfortable and putting stuff out there and not hiding behind anything else. And I don't know if you've seen like how the things have shifted from where I started out as string pages and then went to the underground and then now I'm just doing my own thing. Like it I was afraid of that. And I think a lot of people are afraid of doing that is like being out in the open, being called out. And you know what? That's how authentic growth happens. That's how work is done. Um, and that's how things are being designed and created. It's not just hiding behind closed doors. It's being out in the open and out in the environment.
For sure. I mean, the strength of a claim is also related to its falsifiability. So the only way we can really falsify what we might be saying is to actually put it out there for people to mess with and judge. And so, we're not immune to that, and we shouldn't try to make ourselves immune to that. So,
No.
like, one of the guys I'm working with who kind of is helping me psychologically a bit, like think about my position here is Sean Mishka, and he always says, "Show your work."
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Show your work. If you think you're right, show it. People will tell you if you're right or not. But you have to be
Yeah.
open to criticism too, because I think a lot of guys try to protect themselves from being criticized and being judged, and I don't do that. And it doesn't mean I'm not going to bite back when I think I'm right, but I'm
Yeah.
definitely not free to be criticized, for free from being criticized.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing too. For me was always mentally and psychologically was just like if I'm being criticized, oh, I must be stupid or I must be wrong, and I like shut down, and that's just my own mental thing, and whatnot. But now it's like I'm trying to embrace that growth, being that learner's path, and always on this adventure of just see where life takes me, and I love this world of skill acquisition, ecological dynamics, all this stuff and if my understanding isn't right, I'm going to learn from it. And I think a lot of people need to be that. open and honest with themselves to find clarity.
For sure. I mean, I take the position that I'm probably wrong. I mean, when you think
Yeah,
about
same here.
when you think about the massive amount of interacting component parts in this giant system we're trying to operate, our opinions about what's happening are probably not sound. I mean, at some level they might be, but again, there's so much more we need to understand about what's happening. To lay claim like we'd be immune from being wrong is the silliest fucking thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people need it. A lot of people need to know that.
Yeah,
A lot
yeah,
of
I
people need
agree.
to know that. Um, Taking things beyond jujitsu and whatnot, and these principles that you've learned about, ecological dynamics, dynamic systems theory, constraints approach. Where do you see yourself, or see like the biggest opportunities to apply this in like business skills, creative pursuits, technical ability outside of your sandbox?
I don't know. I actually don't do anything outside of my sandbox, so I don't really, all of my learning goes right back into being a coach in jujitsu, and that's my passion. That's my hobby. That's what I do. I mean, I do have a little bit of a little writing hobby that I do that I don't ever share. But for that, what I do is I write. So I treat it just like I would a grappling session or a coaching session. I have an intention for what I want to put on the page, and I put it on the page. And once I put it out on the page, I adjust as I go. Um, I mean, I don't know. And I have some other friends who do coding who use some of these principles to guide themselves along learning how to code, or other writers. I have a student named Soul. She uses it for her poetry. And so I don't know. I mean, but again, I don't know. I think for me, it's pure coaching. It's pure jujitsu. I don't do shit else, man.
I love it. I love it. Someone that's fully immersed in what they're passionate about. That's awesome. And you don't, that's admirable too, because a lot of people don't do that. Like, or from my perspective, I don't see a lot of people doing that. They're trying to do multiple different things at once. And I mean, I succumbed to that too. I was trying to do like a bunch of different things, and I'm just like, no, this is too stressful and stuff like that. But no, that's admirable. Um, let's see. I have a few more. Um, so kind of, I know you just mentioned that you do a lot of writing that you're not open to. I know that I think that would be really interesting. Is that like on a website for you, or is that just your personal thing?
No, it's my personal thing, man. Like, so one of my very first interests when I was in high school, like right when you started like having interests, just like my personal artistic one was I was really into free verse poetry and prose. And
Oh wow.
so, yeah, so that's what I used to write. I mean, there used to be this show called Def Poetry Jam on HBO, and I would stay home on
Oh yeah.
Friday nights to watch it. Like I was obsessed, Like there's a guy on there who'd present all the time named Saul Williams, and the style that Saul Williams would use is called slam poetry. It's basically an
Hmm.
expressive, orative free verse where it's not just what's being said, but how it's being said. It's the presentation of what's being said, and that's what I was really into when I was in high school. So I wrote quite a bit, and then I just kind of I fell out of the practice. When I started jiu-jitsu, a lot of the things I did prior to jiu-jitsu just kind of went hard behind because jiu-jitsu became such an obsession for me. But now, as my aging, breaking body is starting to catch up with me, I need some other shit to fill that free space and free time. So yeah.
No, I hear you. That's something I've kind of gotten into. Like growing up, I wasn't the best student. Actually, funny enough, I almost got kicked out of college my first semester. Uh, just because not being a great student. I just never liked it. But for me, I never liked reading. I never liked the like traditional way of learning and all that stuff. And so I liked writing. I liked music as I have a guitar behind me. I love playing that. But kind of like you, I got into it like in high school, a little bit in college, and I was a collegiate athlete at the time. So my time like was so spent in that as well. Kind of put a lot of those beside me, or like put those to the wayside, and then now a few years ago like picking back up writing more, doing a little bit of a newsletter too for what I call Hammer and Anvil, ode to Nikolai Bernstein. With that's kind of what I came with, but also with me being a nerd, like Dungeons and Dragons is a fun game that I like to play too, and like
Oh, nice.
Blacksmithery and all that stuff too, fantasy world. So I was just like, that's, you know what, let's do it. fuck it. Like,
Well, I've
go with it.
noticed in your most recent post, you're merging those things. You're merging the world of skill acquisition with high fantasy, uh, let's say, I guess, creative writing. And so I've noticed,
Hmm.
and I actually appreciate that. Like, I think it's a pretty cool mixing of things. But here's what's really strange. Like, I have to parse things out. Like, and I don't know why I have to do it. So I get so serious like about the science that I can't mix it with anything else. Like even though it's beautiful and
Uh,
interesting, but I'm not saying it's
yep.
bad. Like my
No, no,
mind.
no.
So I have this weird part about me where one side I'm extremely rigid in my thinking. Like I'm very cataloged, I'm very analytical. But then this other side where I want to do the complete opposite. But for some reason, I cannot let those two things come together. So when I'm feeling creative in writing, I cannot have anything to do with ecological dynamics. In fact, what I like to do is I like to take some of the concepts and principles of ecological dynamics and I try to interject them into the subjective human experience. So I like to think about the concepts of affordances and degeneracy, and I like to try to make them more holistic. And how is a person interacting with the world? And when I write, that's what I write about. But it has none of the
Uh,
language, just the human perspective. But again, I can't
yeah.
mix them. Ugh.
Yeah. No, that honestly, that's kind of how I was too. Like when it came to being me and so immersed in strength and conditioning, sports performance, and science, like here's the protocols, here's all this, here's the testing, and then the creative side where it's like playing guitar and also having that rigid learning of like you have to learn music theory, chord structure, all that stuff, and then writing, all that. And I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna throw shit against the wall and see what just happens, see how I can mix it that way and kind of make it my own game. And like for me, like I just mentioned, like playing Dungeons and Dragons, video games, card games like that, like I looked at it like there's a system behind it, look at the science and like make it creative and all that. And that's kind of like why I'm having you on here for like this relaunch, I guess, of my podcast. I'm calling it the Unfinished Podcast, because I want to throw stuff out there that's unfinished, like the messy part of things.
Okay.
And that's kind of like what the writing is, what playing guitar is like. This is my learning process, and it's messy as all fuck, like
It,
all of it. And that's kind of that that's kind of what it is. Learning is messy. It shouldn't be so rigid and structured, and that's why like looking back and being so like mindful, like that's why I didn't do well in school. Like it's so rigid. You have to ace your tests. You got to do this, and your repetitive information. You got to know this, and then you have the American dream of making money, salary, all that. That like, and I've been shit out from it recently, with my latest full-time job, from that. But it's kind of coming full circle now these past couple months, and that's kind of what I want to start is this era of messy, unfinished.
And what I was thinking about when you're saying that is what I like about it, something I like about in my personal life. So, like, I like the human tradition of oration, talking, speaking, saying things out loud, performing, right? It's our first
Hmm.
way that we did it, not to, get too personal here, but it's like standing around a fire and screaming noises into the air as we all celebrated together. There was a reason
Hmm.
that we did that. And so those things are still very powerful for the human experience. So, in the literature, they talk about the effect of analogy and metaphor, which are both orative
Hmm.
traditions where we try to build a bridge between two unlike things so we can have a new subjective experience. And so sometimes this can be more reinforcing for future behavior than say cold hard facts, right? And
Hmm.
when we say cold hard facts, we actually kind of stumble a little bit because again, it's just a more rigid example of the tradition and ceremony of metaphor, and an analogy, right? So when we come up with we coin a term and we come up with that, we're just taking a guess at putting a symbol behind a chunk of meaning. And so I think that we can do that in multiple directions. And so when I was reading your stuff, it sung true to me that concept of taking analogy and metaphor and then trying to put something more true behind it, and then trying to get it out there to create a feeling in the learner. And so even though I don't do much of that, I don't think in my coaching, I appreciate the idea because in the other aspect of my life that has nothing to do with coaching, I explore the idea of tradition, ceremony, analogy, metaphor quite a bit. And I really enjoy it in my own personal life. So that's very cool.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I appreciate it, and appreciate that you can find something in my work, in my writing. I honestly, I'm just doing it just to get my mind out there, my words out there, and kind of show that creative side, I guess, because, I was always taught not to show that. And I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to do it. Like,
What's
I'm
funny is
human. I want to grow.
no great writer has done anything other than that. Like I think it was
Yeah,
Hemingway that
exactly.
said the only thing we
Hmm.
do as a writer is try to sit down and write the perfect sentence, right? And so it's like that's really what we're all trying to do. Sometimes we hit, sometimes we don't. I'm sure Dostoevsky wasn't sitting around being like, I'm going to use this deep existential dread and pessimism to inspire a future generation of thinkers. He was just being himself. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So thank goodness he was himself, or we wouldn't have his work. So
Yeah,
whatever
for
level we're
sure.
operating on, it's good to put it out there.
And these people that we know from history and these icons, like, how else do we know about them without them putting their work out? Like, they didn't have it stuck in their mind. They didn't have it hidden. They had it out there in the world.
Yeah, it was crazy. One of my favorite poets is, of course, and people are gonna laugh when they hear this, is Charles Bukowski. It's like so stereotypical. It's like I'm a cliche at this point. But Bukowski was interesting because he didn't get any notoriety for his writing till he was in his 50s. I mean, this dude lived a rugged, tough life, worked at post office, worked at this job, with that job. He was an alcoholic by the time he became successful. He actually died of stomach cancer. This dude was like, went through the shit, but he never, ever, ever stopped writing. And what was interesting when he first came out and started doing his stuff publicly and doing public readings. So back in the 70s and 80s, when you'd go to a public reading, there'd be like 10 people there that were interested in your shit.
Right.
But he was such like a personality. There'd be like 300 people at like a local bookstore to hear Bukowski read some of his poetry. And most of the time, it was just him getting drunk, pandering at the crowd. You know what I mean? But either way, it was interesting that no matter what he faced, he never stopped. And again, even his style reflects that. And I think it makes it that much more interesting. It's raw, it's gritty, it's just like he was. And so we get to benefit from he expressing himself however we find him.
For sure, for sure. I guess looking like there's a lot of gold nuggets within this conversation so far, and I love it. Where is Greg heading now in the near future? What are some avenues that you got coming up?
Well, I got some like professional stuff coming up. I was supposed to be at AIGA coaching the Allion team or being part of their little coaching staff. They do a really cool thing where they bring in a bunch of different like experts, like a nutrition guy and like a strength conditioning guy, to kind of leading up to that week to sort of help the team get excited for their performance. Unfortunately, this took me out of that, which sucked. I was really looking forward to spending time with that team. Of course, I'm the American coach for the Misfits. So I'm organizing that or my side of things. So those are the two like professional things I have coming up. I also have a camp we're doing in Spain from September 18th to the 22nd. I'm doing it with my buddy Max Bickerton out of the Grapple Collective and their photographer Violet. We're doing this whole thing together. But other than that, I really have nothing much coming up. I have some seminars on the books. But me professionally, honestly, I really, really, really want to grow my team. I'm trying to get more people to come here to learn from us specifically, whether they're new, whether they have experience, black belt, purple, we don't care. People move to Austin to train, people move to New York to train, people move to San Diego to train. We would love people to move to our area and train with us. So, I'm trying to strengthen that as much as I can so I can continue developing elite or high performing athletes.
No, I love it. I love it. Um, I just lost my train of thought, I guess. Um, I guess, is there any, for someone who's diving into these theories and concepts, which at first, my perspective, were very complex and just like way over my head at the time that I started learning this and whatnot. What's some advice you would give someone new learning these concepts?
Uh, and I think the entire field and its understanding centers around relationships, the relationship between the intrinsic capacities of an individual and how they express it out onto a world full of opportunities. And these interactions are so complex, we're often misled to let one thing mean another thing. So the more sensitive we become to the relationships that are present between the agent, the environment, and the tasks they're performing, I think the better we do our job. I think if we keep the focus that context is everything, the performance environment is always novel, and that exposure to variation is what prepares us for this, I think we're off to a good start. other than that, I really have no other advice to give. Apply the things you think you understand, see their effects, be willing to change, and continue moving in that direction.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, is there anything else you would like to spew out at all?
No, not at all, man. Again, always good having a conversation. I wish you luck with the work you're doing and with this podcast. Hope it gets off the ground, and I hope you get what you're looking for. But yeah, man, nothing.
No, I appreciate Greg. It's a great conversation, very humbling, and honestly very insightful. A lot of things are, I guess, new ideas are coming up. I'm looking at diving into like a game theory series in my newsletter on how to gamify things from all that. So having you on this, like, it's gonna help kickstart that.
Cool, man. I hope so, buddy. Anything to help.
Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate it, my man.
Yeah, brother.